All right, lads, here we are, another 10 hours, almost 50 hours into this campaign, and 180 years in. 181 years. And there she is, we are Prussia. Of course, if we switch over to diplomacy, you can see how absolute diplomatic supremacy around Europe in particular, just really, really doing honestly too well. And I mean that. We've been crippling our relations, as many people know, which has been quite inefficient in terms of diplo points. I have kind of reflected upon that and compared this game to actually my other attempts, and I am still leaning towards, I think we're ahead, basically. I think despite spending, I mean, we must have wasted hundreds of diplo points this game, guys. I wouldn't be surprised if we would be in the multiple thousands of diplo points down the drain due to inefficiencies. But at the end of the day, geographically, we're just so large, and it synergizes really nicely with our annexation cost efficiency that we're stacking. Just seized land, so we are in the age of absolutism, aka the age of cancer, basically, where you remove all of these, and we need to get our crown land up to 75, and, the states are just a mess leading up to this age and during this age. Every time you seize land, there are rebels. Speaking of the age of absolutism, we're at 85 out of 95. Pretty good. Pretty good. It's been a pretty rough patch and period in general. And once this gets up to 15 here, so 2 more Caesars, we will be up to out of 100 absolutism, giving us the option to retract one of these if we want to give us a bit of a buffer. But that's the idea, is that we take these 2 monarch points here and have 100 absolutism. And the reason this age has been quite a lot of turmoil is because of the religious shenanigans. My plan to divide the religion really well and have the Hussites flip, in my opinion, it was a success. I have had switching to Hussite late in the game basically ruin the game completely and be completely demoralizing and feel like it's impossible and taking decades until I did sort of refine this strategy. However, for people who watched, they will know that we did get trolled to the absolute maximum degree. And I mean this, when the Hussite rebels went around to convert, they converted a grand total of 1 Protestant province, which rapidly became the majority of my religion, or excuse me, the most dominant religion was Protestant. So if the Hussites would convert the Protestants, it would be sort of doubly effective. And a lot of people were criticizing me that some of the logic that I was breaking down in regards to the religious stuff didn't make sense. Well, what they didn't realize is how many provinces at the time had the negative 100 modifier for having been recently converted either by the centers of religion or previously by myself. So it's complicated, but yeah, I'll just say that if you were in the loop of what was actually happening, some of the things I was saying would have made a little bit more sense. But nonetheless, we've enforced on, if not all, just about all of our subjects, and that is how Hussite looks worldwide. I mean, let's be honest, guys. Pretty dominant, I would say, right? A lot of these Catholic areas that are under occupation, Orthodox areas, are pretty big. But Hussite, it's no joke. Risen from, I think at one stage, 2 provinces is how low it got down to. And, here we are within a few decades of becoming Hussite. So I think this redeems for people who were doubting that flipping Hussite late is sort of doable. Just like I said on my initial sort of mission statement, you are always limited by the conversions that you can make in your own country. If you are trying hard, like you have religious, you have the centers of religion, you make that a priority early, you're always limited by that. So Hussite specifically, you can see this is all my subjects. That's the total I could potentially convert. And 4 months, which is the vast majority, you can do 3 times per year, right? 3 times 4 months is 12 months, 1 year, which means it's 3 times 6, which is what, 18. So we're converting 18 of these per year. I mean, if you look at the list, well, you get the point. I mean, we're just chunking it, and it's all going to be Hussite. I was going to say that some people don't realize that Hussite itself has 2 missionary strength versus heretics, and with our policies, we have 5 missionary strength versus heretics. So if we look at our religious here, it looks like Jerusalem gives 2 versus heretics, and armor of the righteous. I'm not sure exactly what that is. Something else. I can't pin it right now. But the point is, we have 15.5 missionary strength, and additional, what is that, 7 or something, versus heretics. So we're just an absolute animal. It doesn't really matter if the development's high. We're doing them in all sort of sub 5 months until we get down to some of the Muslims. Religious game looking really good. So otherwise we formed Prussia, of course, which some of you might not have seen yet. And the reason we formed Prussia is for the missions. There are some missions which are absolutely superb, which I would really like, but they're bottlenecked behind things like this. Developing Berlin to 25 dev. That's a lot of points, guys, and we could do it, but then it's bottlenecked behind this, having 20% additional discipline with our sort of makeup of ideas and so on, which we were forced to do. We're only going to have one military idea the entire game, which is offensive. Even with an advisor, we would literally need to get the event to make that even possible, and I don't plan to be Prussia for very long. So unfortunately, the great Prussian military reform on war, these amazing bonuses we will not receive, and neither will we receive that bonus, which theoretically could be really strong. In our case, we don't have any diplo points to culture convert anyway. For 20 years, we won't get any of that, but the reason we did form Prussia, of course, is to come down this line and to get the German Confederation 5 admin efficiency. So we're making good headway there, and we did keep the Austrian ideas. So a lot of people, they see Prussia and they think, oh, we're a military powerhouse. Of course, we do not have the Prussian government type, because as strong as it is, it cripples your governing capacity. And we do not have the Prussian traditions. So we're not really Prussia in reality, in the military sense. We just want the German Confederation, and then we're moving on. And speaking of which, if we go ahead and take a look around, I have chunked, we fought France some more. I broke my way into the British Isles. So this is a good platform with these 2 provinces. We can make sure we can cross the strait now. But I have 2 provinces to funnel in, or ferry in, and start chunking the British Isles. So we should not have to worry about beating him at sea. That's the idea. This stuff is still kind of technically a colony in the sense that there's no land bridge here, and same with Portugal itself. One of our next moves is to go into Spain. We've been feeding Portugal his claims into Spain, but that's mostly to keep Spain out of joining the coalition, which we've been doing a good job, very good job managing. A lot of the Muslim world just doesn't even mind at all nowadays. It's just the typical ones that we have been actually destroying here around our border, and that's of course because we're quite a lot smaller than I anticipated or intended to be in the Muslim world, but we're doing pretty well in Europe. And I do have disappointing news, guys, if we sort of move on to some of the ways that this game is going badly. Much like I did suspect, France, so we already were in a situation here where my truce came up with France, and ideally I would have already formed Sardinia-Piedmont and already PU'd them at that stage when my truce came up, because we have fulfilled the Sardinia-Piedmont missions required to PU France based on how much we've done to him already. Regrettably, I have to attack him so that the truce, he doesn't join a coalition against us. And I did do a 3-province reconquest of the remaining Aragonese provinces, mostly to just kind of whack-a-mole him, keep him out of the coalition. But as I had very much suspected here, guys, he's up to 253 negative relations from aggressive expansion, and we're only just getting started, guys. To rush down the Sardinia-Piedmont missions, I need to full annex Switzerland. I need 1 of these Swiss provinces from Milan, and I need these 2 provinces. So this is one of our next moves here. We're going to dow Spain. In fact, these are literally our next moves. Is what we're going to do is dow Spain with the intention to whack-a-mole his truce so he doesn't join the coalition. And we're just slow rolling him, feeding him to Portugal. I'm trying to close this gap and kind of close this gap over here so we can walk around Europe. once that is started, we have dodged Defender of the Faith here. So we're going to show superiority fighting Great Britain and Milan. But if we have everything, all of our units here, we should find with War Score from battles, we can pretty much just ignore Great Britain. And I'm happy to get a truce with him. We got plenty. We don't need to start on Great Britain yet. And the goal will be to take these two and that. That's all we need to complete the Sardinia Piedmont missions. But however, that's Catholic land, guys. This is a bit of Catholic AE. That's a lot of Catholic AE. The dev's high. Then we're going to go for Switzerland, who is guaranteed by Milan, as you can see. So I suspect that will work with our truce coming up. 3 years. Yeah, should work. So right before we peace out Milan, we're on the tail end of that, where you will dow Switzerland to dodge this guarantee. And that's going to be a full annexation. Now, he's reformed, but with the proximity and the high dev, that's a lot more AE. And then, apart from that, we're prepping the Sardinia Piedmont missions. We need to, of course, complete these missions. So you can see I need 2 more provinces out of all of those. And where we're going to resource that is actually from Cleves. Because if we take a look at these missions, they're all taken from Westphalia, who is Berg, by the way. Berg formed Westphalia. So we're going to avoid those 3 and leave them for later, because we're just prioritizing the missions. So if we take 2 from Munster here, then if we take the full annexation of Munster, all we need to pass both of these is Berg and Nassau. And then we come down to the Rhineland conquest. You see all of those provinces? That's a total of 12 provinces highlighted. You need 10, which means we can take all but 2. Well, one of those 2 will be Frankfurt, so we can avoid fighting him, and it will all come from Westphalia. And the other one will be Aachen, because it's just such high dev. So the idea is that if we take 10 of those, I'm hoping, guys, unfortunately they're allied to each other. So I'm hoping that we can actually co-belligerent them and combine that into one war. And one of my concerns is the war score cost, but I think it's doable. If you see, maybe we have to separate piece Cleves, and that will cost a lot of Diplo, which I'm worried about. But it's almost entirely possible if we separate piece Cleves. So we co-belligerent him, we full index Cleves. That means we need Berg, Nassau, and we need 10 provinces here. So you can see what it would be, where it would come from. And, geez, I'm just thinking about this awkward border here. I'm thinking about coring range now. This really is awkward. If I had pieced out Cleves first, we could core down this way. So needless to say, that's going to give us overextension, but we have this, the Palatinate. That we will be handing off the Palatinate's cores to him, and then I can even have him core up some of Germany to complete that mission. I'm hoping we can do this in one war in 5 years, which will be after Switzerland. But what's the point? The point is that France is going to be even more pissed, right? He's going to be just grotesquely mad at us, and we may find, if we're unlucky, if that doesn't go well, that he still is not prepared to be PU'd by 1633. So this is a huge liability. I had feared that's the case, and I think the PU route is not the way to go. That's the conclusion that I have come to. You can see how elderly my ruler is, but honestly, guys, in 10 years or so, when we PU him, 7 years, I mean, my heir is not exactly that young either. And you can see, I mean, all of those modifiers should go away pretty much, like a border, wants your provinces, hostile relations, rival, opinion of heretic and neighboring heretic will not go away. That's 60 in addition to the aggressive expansion. The AE is easily going to be 320 or so. So we're looking at almost negative 400, guys, 400, with only one of those modifiers tapering off being aggressive expansion, because the opinion of heretics and so on does not taper off. So, not to mention, of course, you'll have declared war, enforced a personal union over you, was at war, but all of those will taper off pretty quickly. But it's just the AE, guys. I think, you can do a maximum of improve your relations by 200, and it's going to be decades before we could get him into the positive. And if your ruler dies, you lose him as a union. That's going to prolong the 50 years before you can annex them again. Long story short, we're not going to PU France, guys, which is pretty sad. I don't really have any regrets. Like, I still forced myself to go into France, which is still a huge bottleneck because we're going to need him to form Rome. You can see at the moment it would take 6 additional wars. Some things to consider are that he is beginning to build up some war score outside of Europe and outside of the areas to form Rome, so we don't actually need to full annex him. But yeah, this is a big concern and a big priority of ours. We're going to get 5 admin efficiency here. We're going to get 5 admin efficiency here. Those are two things that are coming soon. And 15 more absolutism is what? About another 5 admin efficiency. So we're looking at, 50 admin efficiency is right around the corner. And that's going to close that gap. We might get away with 4 wars or so. It's very important, though, because we have reduced war score cost by 30%, 10% here, and this. This is pre-imperialism. Imperialism will create 55% in every war we ever fight, which is the dream. But it's very important if we actually want to pull this off effectively that I have to feed him to subjects, like some combination of Aragon and Portugal, because obviously we will 100% overextend, and it still won't be a 100% peace deal, if you see what I'm saying. So we're going to be looking at chunking France every day of the week, 100%ing him, and if we wanted to, we could postpone Great Britain to 1 war at this stage, where we just take London and York as a kind of final dash. So otherwise, I did postpone forming Croatia. I mentioned forming Croatia last session, but I wanted to postpone they actually have a generic mission, which gives you annexation cost reduction. So what we ended up doing is I simply had some Turkish states at the time. I switched to actually Turkish primary culture after unstating everything, and then I was able to therefore switch to Prussian primary culture. Whereas as an Austrian, we had full acceptance of Germans, and I could not switch to Prussian primary to form Prussia. Of course, Pomeranian or Saxon would have had the same effect, but yeah, you can also see our capital Pest was converted to Prussian, unfortunately, and you don't even get, that's what happens when you form Prussia, your capital gets converted, and we don't even get the ability to get the massive reduction to convert it back, because it considers it to be originally Hungarian. So yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate, but it's certainly worth it. Otherwise, we're just about done with Prussia, of course, guys, and we're moving on to Sardinia-Piedmont. Now, speaking of Sardinia-Piedmont, this stuff is all awfully complicated, guys, and one thing that I don't like is we need 100 dev in this state, which is an awful lot. You're looking at woods, mountains, and farmlands. This is all the way up to 26, which is pretty good. It's because Savoy has missions which add 7 development, and when we form Sardinia-Piedmont, we get to pass those same missions again and get an additional 7 development on this province. So that's good, but it's still going to be about 15 dev away from 100. And that's a lot of monarch points, and our monarch points, all of them are very valuable to me right now. We're probably doing the best in terms of our military, but I'm about, well, I hope this guy lasts for ages. We're going to get this. Now, we really struggled last generation to actually find a good heir, guys. I was stressing over it. We weren't doing well on prestige. I kept kicking my heirs. And we settled with this guy here, because I don't have to take a military idea. We were doing very well, and we were far ahead in mil. But, yeah, it's that admin and Diplo, which is really appealing, but, not ideal. That's going to go down to 4 per month. So we're doing great in military, but I'm wondering about the future. Are we going to be doing great in military? I hope so. Yeah, we're going to need to do about 15 development, and I'm trying to stack development cost reduction modifiers in Piedmont. We need that prosperity. Very difficult to get the burghers happy, but we could at least get rid of that penalty there. Obviously, I can apply the edict and those sorts of things, but otherwise, like I said, we need those 2 and Switzerland to complete the missions here, and otherwise we can slam down the Sardinia-Piedmont missions. One thing very interesting about Sardinia-Piedmont, guys, a nice little trick, because there's so much nuances and complexities to this run that I don't really often talk about with you guys because I run out of time. I don't want these videos to go on forever. But right now, if we unstate everything apart from these 2 states, I can't unstate that as my capital region, due to this being, like I said, we're pushing for near 100 dev, it's larger than this, right? Obviously. So therefore I can switch to Piedmontese culture, right? I can culture shift. Do you guys see what I'm saying? Perfect. Well, how are we going to form Croatia, guys, at that stage? Think about it. If we now unstate this, because forming Sardinia Piedmont moves your capital here, well, now we have, and then we pass the mission, we have 100 development in this state. So we unstate everything, right? But you can't unstate this. Well, how are we going to get the Croatians to be majority culture? Think about that. Well, there's a very interesting solution, which is we can actually fulfill all of the requirements to form Sardinia Piedmont. State, obviously this is stated, cultural shift, etc., blah, blah, blah. And then you can actually unstate this Piedmont before forming Sardinia Piedmont. So obviously you will have had to have this stated because it's the only Piedmontese culture in the world. But if you unstate it before doing it, when you form Sardinia Piedmont, it will move your capital to Turin, and you will actually have zero autonomy because you always have zero autonomy in your capital, but it will be within a territory. How interesting is that? Which means that we can then unstate Hungary because it's not my capital region, and we will literally have 0 states. Therefore, we can then state even just one, the smallest, whether it's Slovenia or Croatia, and we will be majority culture Croatian because it's our only state. And this only counts your states, of course. When you see that 15%, it's within my states, not my country. So obviously we're practiced here. We're veteran at this stage. I've done this run a few times. And but how like cool is that, guys? There's so much. That's an example of some of the complexities of what goes into this run, addressing some of these issues. That it's so much. It really is, and it's quite overwhelming here. But we're coming to a point where a lot of those issues that I have, theorized and concerned about, worried about, the religious stuff, a lot of it's coming to the end. And we're going to get near to kind of consuming the world. So speaking of coming to an end, forming Croatia, which is after Sardinia and Piedmont, is going to give us 20 years of 15% annexation cost reduction because they have the generic mission, which is at least 2 subjects, and then you get 15% annexation cost reduction. But also Sardinia and Piedmont has a permanent 10%. So at that stage, we're going to be annexation cost reduction capped, and I want to integrate everything apart from Russia. Now, I'm not sure, because we PU'd these guys too recently, you see it's like 19 years away. I assume we'll be able to get them, but obviously it should go without saying that we also have a lot of admin efficiency, and we'll have at least 50, right? I don't know if this next tech is soon. Yeah, 23 is a while away, but we'll have at least 50. So again, absurdly efficient annexation of all of these guys. Portugal, the guys to form Rome are obviously absolute priority. Whereas Lithuania, Sweden, Denmark, Russia, not so much. But it's relations, guys. If we want to keep getting the annexation cost reduction from the parliament to annex stuff in the future, which we will, our vassals, as we go, the idea is you need five subjects to get that modified consistently. 5 vassals, excuse me. So I want my relations to be basically with vassals. We will have Russia. Russia's going to stick around to help us convert because we can, attack things like Uzbek, core up the south side, give the north side to him. It's a kind of thing we can repeat very often, and he'll help us convert. He's got religious ideas. But overall, we want vassals, so we can keep that modifier, keep integrating vassals, and vassalize more nations. That's what's going to happen. Really thrilled with this, guys. We're still in a bit of a transformative period where we're going to go Sardinia, Piedmont, Croatia, and then finally Germany, and we are essentially German. We're going to finally switch the Austrian traditions at that point because we use this annexation cost reduction. We're going to switch that to German and use the German, which gives you the additional 5 admin efficiency, and then the extra 5 from their missions, which will put us near 60, of course. But we are German in every sense, right? Austria is our flagship culture until, of course, we form Rome, which is mostly a spiritual thing, but it's also part of the challenge as well, as to do it as a lost culture of Rome. And lastly, I'll just say, speaking of culture here, guys, I'll just say that we're not that big. We're not that big. It's very typical to do most of the culture conversion towards the end of the game in this run, but even with that being said, we're not that big, and that comes down to the inefficiencies with our deploy costs. So we've been doing badly in that sense. I'm not going to lie about that, but I think overall the game's going incredibly well, and it's going to get pretty grindy going into the late game. But yeah, I hope to see you guys live at about 6 p.m. GMT if you can make it. And I know some of you guys have been looking forward to these updates. You've been commenting, so I'll try to keep pumping them out. Obviously, the later we go into the campaign, the more, I did like 3 streams, guys, and 20 years goes by, so it gets more and more slow and sort of tedious, as it should be, needless to say, as the campaign gets later and later. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video and this update. Things are going well. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.